POV, you're stealing an election. The moment you realize you're actually going to do this is 3 a.m. on a Tuesday, and you're sitting in a basement conference room that smells like old carpet and regret, staring at a spreadsheet that contains the architecture of how you're going to change the outcome of an election that 8 million people think is already decided. And the thing that gets you, the thing that actually gets you, is how mundane it is. You expected to feel something: electricity, dread, the weight of what you're about to do pressing down on your chest like a stone. Instead, what you feel is tired. You feel like you're reviewing expense reports. There's a guy named Derek next to you who brought his own snacks, and he's eating Cool Ranch Doritos while you discuss how to systematically invalidate 47,000 votes from precincts that weren't supposed to go your way. This is how it starts. Not with dramatic music or shadowy figures in trench coats. It starts with a meeting that nobody called a meeting. It starts with people who convinced themselves a long time ago that the rules don't actually apply when the stakes are this high. And you're not a criminal. You're not even really a political operative. You're just someone who believed in something enough that you agreed to lunch with the wrong person, and lunch turned into a conversation, and the conversation turned into a number, and the number turned into this. You have exactly 6 days. That's the deadline. That's when the votes get certified. And once they're certified, you become just another person who lost an election. But if you move before then, if you move right now, there's still a window. There's still a possibility that nobody has to know what happened here. Derek is explaining phase 1, which is the easy part. Phase 1 is mail-in ballots, specifically 2,300 mail-in ballots from 6 precincts that were processed yesterday and flagged in the system as questionable because apparently, and this is the thing that actually makes your eye twitch, apparently 98% of them voted for the other candidate. 98%, which is statistically impossible unless there's something wrong with how they were processed, and Derek has already confirmed with someone, he won't say who, that there's nothing wrong with how they were processed. They were processed correctly. They're just all votes for the wrong person. And here's where it gets interesting. Here's where it stops being boring and starts being brilliant in a way that makes you genuinely question your moral framework. Because those votes are illegal. Not because of what they say, but because of a technicality in the registration database. A technicality that Derek's team found by manually cross-referencing 4 separate systems. A technicality that nobody has ever noticed before, because nobody has ever thought to look for it. So all you have to do is disqualify them based on that technicality. You don't have to destroy them. You don't have to pretend they don't exist. You just have to process them according to procedure, according to the exact rules that exist on the books, and they disappear. And that's the genius of it. That's what keeps you awake at night, actually, because it's legal, it's defensible. If anyone asks why you disqualified 2,300 votes, you have a documented procedure that explains exactly why, and the procedure is correct, and you followed it. You followed the rules. The other 3,700 votes are trickier. Phase 2 is different. Phase 2 is about turnout suppression, but not in the way you're thinking. You're not stuffing ballot boxes or destroying votes. You're doing something that's almost worse because it's invisible. There are 47 polling places in the city, and in the precincts that lean the wrong way, there's a memorandum that goes out, very official, very administrative, explaining that due to procedural updates, voters will need to bring 2 forms of ID instead of 1, just starting tomorrow, just for this election, just in these specific areas. And the thing is, it's legal. The law says voters can be required to bring ID. The law doesn't say they can't change that requirement at the last second. The law doesn't say you can't apply the requirement selectively. So it's not fraud, technically, it's just creative interpretation. It's just noticing that there's a gap in the rules big enough to drive a truck through, and then driving a truck through it. Derek estimates it'll suppress maybe 8 to 12% of the vote in those areas. That's between 3,800 and 5,700 fewer votes. Combined with Phase 1, you're already at roughly 6,000 to 8,000 votes, and that might be enough. That might be all you need. but it might not be. Phase 3 is where it gets dark. Phase 3 is the provisional ballots. See, there are always provisional ballots. There are always people who show up to vote, but their name isn't in the system, or their address doesn't match, or something is slightly wrong. And those ballots get set aside and processed later, after the provisional board reviews them, after verification. And the provisional board is 7 people, and you already know how 6 of them are going to vote, because you've had drinks with 5 of them, and the 6th one you're going to have drinks with tomorrow. The thing about provisional ballots is that nobody really pays attention to them. They're a fraction of a percent of total turnout. But in a close election, in an election where you've already trimmed the margin with selective ID requirements and technical disqualifications, provisional ballots become something else. They become disposable. They become the thing that nobody will audit because they're already so small that they're almost invisible. You can invalidate 800 of them, maybe 900, maybe more if you're careful. If you write the right notes on the right forms, if you document your disqualifications with just enough plausible reason that anyone reviewing them would have to spend hours cross-referencing systems to figure out that you're lying. And that's the thing that finally gets you. The fact that you're thinking about how long it would take someone to catch you. The fact that you're calculating the likelihood of an audit. The fact that you're sitting in a basement conference room eating Cool Ranch Doritos and thinking about how to commit a crime so meticulously that it might take a federal investigation to uncover it. Derek is still talking. He's explaining phase 4 now, but you've stopped listening because you're doing the math. 6,000 votes from phases 1 and 2, 800 votes from phase 3. That's 6,800 votes if you're conservative. The margin of victory in this election is 12,000 votes. You can't do this. You can't actually do this, except you already did. You're already in the basement. You're already part of the meeting. You already heard the plan. And now that you've heard it, you're complicit. You're either going to go forward or you're going to be the person who had to make a choice. And whatever choice you make is the one you have to live with forever. Derek finishes his explanation and looks at you. He's waiting for you to say something. He's waiting for you to confirm that you're going to do your part, that you're going to handle the provisional ballots, that you're going to process the mail-in disqualifications, that you're going to be the person who stands in the room when the votes are certified and watches 12 million people believe that democracy just worked the way it was supposed to. And the crazy part is that it probably will work. You'll probably get away with it. You'll probably go your entire life without anyone knowing that you did this. You'll probably retire with your reputation intact and your conscience just heavy enough that you don't sleep quite as well as you used to, but light enough that you can rationalize it. That's what happens to people who steal elections. They don't get caught. They go home. They live their lives. They become the thing that nobody suspects because they're just normal people who made a choice in a basement and then carried that choice around with them forever. Derek is still looking at you, and you realize that this is the moment, this is the actual moment where your entire life pivots, not the moment after, not when you're being arrested or when you're confessing or when you're testifying under oath. This moment, right now, in this basement, with Cool Ranch Doritos and spreadsheets and a plan that is almost certainly going to work. You open your mouth to say something, and you think about those 8 million people. You think about what it means to them when they vote. You think about the mathematics of it, that if enough people like you in enough basements make the same choice, then voting stops being a privilege and becomes something that looks like voting but isn't. And then you think about Derek, and you think about the person on the phone call that Derek won't tell you about, and you think about how this is all so perfectly structured that it might actually be impossible to stop once it starts. Derek is still waiting, and that's where you are. That's where you've been since 3 a.m. That's where you're going to be, one way or another, for the rest of your life, because you can't unhear this meeting. You can't unknow this plan. You can't pretend that you don't understand exactly how fragile democracy actually is when you're sitting in a room with the people who understand how to break it. The question is just whether you're going to be the person who breaks it or the person who had the chance and didn't. Derek checks his watch. The certification vote is in 6 days. What are you going to do?